Hi there, I'm Lee Davis, one of the solutions consultants from Computer World in Bristol. I'm sat here with Jamie Smith, who's one of our senior Microsoft technical consultants. So we've got a recorded webinar just following a recent technical session that we've done, which was the first of our technology and education sessions, and this one focused on System Center Configuration Manager 2012 R2. So we've just gone through, the webinar is going to last maybe 45 minutes, and we're going to go through at a fairly top level different elements of SCCM. So we're going to talk about deployment models, application deployment, application virtualization, operating system deployment. Going to go on around some of the ancillary options in there, so your forefront endpoint protection, backup, software inventory, software metering, just slowly touch on some of the more emerging technologies that we're seeing coming out of Microsoft as well. So their mobile device management, network access control, and security. So yeah, just going to hand over to Jamie, and he's going to steer us through it.
Hello everyone. Okay, so we'll go through a very quick slide deck initially. There's only a few slides here. The first slide is just highlighting the System Center Suite as it stands today in 2012 R2. Previously, it used to be that although it was all called System Center, it wasn't really a suite of products, and that you could go out and you could purchase individual products depending on your environment and what you wanted to use. So if you only wanted Configuration Manager, you could go out and buy a license for that. If you wanted Operations Manager, you go out and buy a license for that. But now the way it works is that when you buy into System Center, you're effectively getting a suite of products, and you can pick and choose as to what you want to use from that suite. Quite often people start with Configurations Manager for the operating system deployment and application deployment. That's what we're going to be covering today. I'll go over at a very high level briefly, just explaining what each of the other products do, just so that you're aware of them and you might want to consider them further down the line. So starting bottom right, you've got Configuration Manager, as I said before. That's what we're going over today. You've then got Operations Manager. So that's the monitoring element of System Center. It's more than just a reactive monitoring solution, break fix. What it allows you to do is turn your IT support department in from a reactive way of thinking into a more proactive way of thinking. For example, it can go into your Exchange environment or your SQL environment and tell you this is not best practice according to Microsoft. Have you considered changing this? So it kind of gives you a little bit of help as to optimizing your environment and making sure that problems don't arise in your environment, and try and resolve those issues before they become real issues, and that it starts affecting live services and they start going down because of these underlying issues that you might not have noticed, purely because you don't have time to look at the event logs and how things are configured in all your environment, because it tends to be IT support is usually quite strained. The next element is endpoint protection. That's your antivirus. That links in quite well with Configuration Manager, all managed through a single pane of glass. Data Protection Manager, used for your backups, fairly self-explanatory. Orchestrator is if you wanted to automate a process, so you can put it into a runbook, kind of drag and drop facilities to automate a process, so it kind of takes the burden away from knowing a lot about scripting, say PowerShell or Batchshell or whatever you use, VB scripts. You can put it into Orchestrator and it will create a little runbook or automated process for you. If you were doing something a lot of the time, it can save you a lot of money, a lot of time. Service Manager is the kind of help desk ticketing system, which can then be linked in with other elements. For example, you could have our Operations Manager raise an alert to do with, for example, a failed disk in a SAN. Operations Manager can raise that alert. That can then feed into Service Manager, that will then create an IT support ticket to then be resolved and then forward onto the relevant department. It doesn't need to be hardware, it could be software based, so it could be onto your database department or Exchange department, or depending on how your internal processes are configured. Virtual Machine Manager is similar to Virtual Center of the VMware world. You can manage Hyper-V machines using it. You can also manage VMware estate, and you can also manage Citrix all from the same console, which is quite helpful, particularly maybe in a hybrid environment or if you've got Hyper-V. App Controller is just taking Configuration Manager a little step further, managing your applications in a virtual way and maybe using something like self-service. So we'll go on to the next slide. So across the System Center suite, the administrator's experience is the same. It all uses the same kind of console, similar to what you've probably seen in the Office-based products, whereby you have the workspace down the bottom left-hand corner, and then the tabs across the top as to what you want it to do depending on what process or what you're trying to achieve in the console. So really familiar and pretty much the same across the whole System Center suite and other Microsoft products, which is quite good. And this is an example of some metering reports, but we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. So SCCM has the ability to report to you what software you've got installed in your environment, hardware you've got in your environment, and you can do things like how many machines have got a particular piece of software installed, or how many have not run a piece of software in a particular length of time, which allows you to control your licenses, but also get rid of some applications in your environment that may be not used anymore that you're not sure where you can get rid of or not. So we'll now proceed over to the SCCM demo. Go over to the demo environment. Just log in here. Okay, so this is the console that I was talking about before. You've got your workspace down the bottom left-hand corner here. If you wanted to manage your applications, it would be under the software library. You'll tend to find that you'll spend most of your time under assets and compliance and software library, and then if something goes wrong, if you want to know what's happening under monitoring, then administration, you'll go into very rarely more security-based, or if you wanted to modify client settings, something like that. So the first thing we'll look at is the applications within SCCM. You can set up some quite complicated and granular rules. For example, SCCM has the ability to detect what the relationships between a user and the primary device. For example, in the scenario of a school and you have teachers with laptops, SCCM can detect the relationship between a teacher's laptop and the other devices that they use. So what you can say is, I only want a particular application installed on a teacher's laptop, and when they log on to another device, that application won't be made available and it won't install. So it gets around that problem, whereby usually when you target a user in an application deployment situation, every time they log onto a machine, it will deploy on that every machine, which isn't always ideal. You can also deploy an application based on the environment they're running on. For example, if the user's on a terminal server or RDP session, you can deploy an application using that application virtualization so that it's not actually installed in the machine, but then when the user goes back to their own machine, it's installed fully and as you would expect normally. But as far as the end user is concerned, they're running the application the same way. Under the SCCM console, there's only one application actually listed. You're not having to create an application for, say, we've got Office here. You don't have to create Office for AppV and Office for laptops, Office. You're not having to create lots of different applications within SCCM. All you basically do is you set up a deployment type. You say this deployment type is going out to a user's primary device, and this application is going out to maybe Citrix deployment, or whatever way you want to configure it. And SCCM handles all the rules behind that. Or you could keep it really simple. This application is going out to Windows 8 only. This one's going out to Windows 7, for example. However you want to set it up. Can be quite complicated or as simple as you like. You can also set up dependencies on other applications as well. So if an application has been installed but it needs something installed beforehand, you can say, don't install this application until this is installed. So it will kind of create sequences of applications, and within SCCM you can view the relationships between the different applications. So for example, in the vSphere client might need .NET Framework installed. Was it not showing? Dependency, not supersedence. So as you can see here, the vSphere client requires .NET Framework. The other view I was showing is supersedence. So you can say, for example, Office 2010 is going to Office 2012. You can say this is being upgraded from 2010 to 2012, so it will remove the previous application before it installs the new application, which is something quite useful. Or if you just had a minor upgrade, Office 2010 patch 1 to patch 2, you can do all your application patches from within SCCM as well, which is really useful. Under these applications, there's a number of ways that you can deploy them. You can deploy them and make them a required deployment, which is similar to group policy. You're having this application whether you like it or not. The user doesn't get any choice in the matter. They just get presented with a little pop-up down the bottom right-hand corner, or no pop-up depending on how you configure it, to say that an application is being installed in their machine. You can also configure it so the user can postpone it for a number of times or for a length of period. You can also make the application available. So what that allows the users to do is install it themselves without having to contact the IT department. So you basically set up your applications, which you don't want it as part of your image, and you don't want it installed in everyone's machine, but there's no licensing constraints. You just kind of make it available. The user can go in, maybe for example Flash, they can then update their Flash player on their machine. Another way of doing it is you can make an application made available, but subject to approval. So the user goes into the Software Center, which is the place that the users manage their own applications, kind of. And under this one, it says this actually requires approval. So the user can press request, fill out a reason why they want this particular application. I really need it. They press submit, and then that then gets sent off to their manager or IT support department or whatever your internal processes are, and they can then approve that application. Again, kind of taking away from the burden of the IT support department having to manage those applications. You can also control licenses, so you've only got 6 licenses for something. You can then control that and be very granular, and it means that when someone does do a request, you're not having to visit that machine in order to install it. When it's approved by the IT department or manager, the user gets a little pop-up saying this application is now ready to install. They can then go into the Software Center, and instead of request, it will then say install. And because it's then been approved, it's kind of approved for that user. So if the machine was then rebuilt or something like that later on, the user can then install it later on because it's already been approved, which again simplifies the rebuilding processes. So that's application deployment. It's as simple or as complicated as you like. You set it up how you want, and depending on your environment. You've also got, I should just cover briefly, the applications are not just limited to Microsoft applications. You can also use it for Apple-based applications, mobile applications, web applications. So you're not just limited to Microsoft MSIs. So depending on your environment, it can be really flexible. MSIs, AppV applications, whatever you like. You can also deploy executables using packages. A package is basically anything within a folder, pretty much. So it could be as simple as deploying a notepad file from A to B, copying a file over, or it could be a complex series of applications that you wanted to install, or scripts, or whatever you wanted to do. So you can run a script within the folder, just basically anything, which is another useful utility that you can use. Moving that on, you can also use SCCM for software updates, which links in with WSUS. You might be asking, well, why don't I just use WSUS instead of using SCCM? You can use all the complex rules and configurations and deployments that you've already set up in Configuration Manager for deploying your Windows updates. You can also link it in with maintenance windows, so you can say this group of machines has these updates installed on this day, these group of machines have it on this day, which is something quite useful. You can also use the updates to link it in with your images that you've created, and that you update your images offline. So rather than previously what you probably do, periodically start up your machines and install the latest updates, which is a time-consuming process if you've got lots of images. What SCCM can do is inject the drivers from WSUS into an offline file without having to start it up on an automated process, saving you time. The other alternative is, you install an image and you install the updates afterwards, which can then bring a machine out offline for a couple of hours sometimes if you've got enough updates to install and download. So moving on, the next section is operating system deployment. It tends to be with traditional operating system deployment methods such as Ghost. What you would do is you would have your base image, and then you would install all your applications and all your drivers into that. You then might have an image per machine. So if you've got 6 different machines, all with different drivers, you might have 6 different images, and then you might have an image for different departments. So you might have a finance image, you might have an IT support department image, and then you might also have maybe like pupil teacher image that you might want to use. All of this multiplies the amount of images that you need, the amount of complexity that you have, and also increases the time should you want to update that image. What SCCM can do is take away from that traditional way of thinking of putting everything within one image and layering it. So you have your base image, which you'd have your Windows 7, for example, and then you install your Windows updates on top of that. You would then layer drivers on top of it and applications afterwards. All these things are installed independently. For example, if you had an image with Office 2010 and you wanted to go to 2013, all you need to do is update the application within SCCM and tell the task sequence that you're moving over to 2013, and that's all your images updated. The same with drivers. SCCM has the capability to automatically detect what drivers it needs to use from the pool of drivers that it's got. So if you had a new machine that comes into your environment you've not had before, rather than creating a new image for that, all you need to do is add the drivers into the pool, and then that's automatically ready to go and can then be deployed in your environment. Much quicker way of managing your images. So the images are used or deployed using task sequences. When you first create your task sequence, it's all wizard driven, so you don't need to know anything about scripting. Already integrates things like sysprep, silent installs. It does all that for you, so it kind of simplifies the process of deploying your OS to your machines. And then it can handle things like migrations between Windows XP to 7, 7 to 8. You can also link that in with something called User State Migration Tool, or USMT. So you can migrate your user profiles from XP to 7, 7 to 8. It also has a feature called hard linking, whereby you can rebuild your operating system around the user profile, which is useful for machine refreshes. Rather than copying all the user settings and data off the machine and then back on again, what you can do is you can rebuild the operating system around that profile and settings, which is a much faster rebuild process. And potentially you could even advertise that refresh out to your users so that they could rebuild their own machines if you wanted to do it that way. Again, completely customizable for your environment. You decide as to what's most appropriate. So this is a task sequence. So think of a task sequence just like a script, but it's a graphical user interface script. You don't need to know anything about scripting. It's just a case of, I want to add something into my image. It's just a case of selecting that item. I want to add BitLocker. Just add BitLocker into the task sequence. It's that simple. If you want to decrypt a machine, you just select that from the list. If you want to add in our application, just a case of selecting the application from the list. There it is. It's in the list that's part of that image. You can also use it if you wanted to be a little bit more complicated about it. You can use conditions. So you can say only run this step for a particular user or a particular object or a particular operating system. So that reduces the number of task sequences that you actually need in your environment. So in effect, you could have one task sequence for everyone, and then depending on your conditions that you configure in your task sequence, or up here in the applications, will determine what actually goes onto that machine. Some of you might already use the Microsoft Development Toolkit, or MDT. You can also link that in with SCCM, so that investment that you've got in that you can carry over, which creates extra functionality into SCCM OS deployments in that you can have interactive builds. So you might have quite a complex environment where every machine is a little bit different. What you can do is you can deploy the operating system onto the machine, and when the machine boots up, you'll basically have a series of tick boxes and a wizard to go through to say, I want this application on this machine, I want profile migrated off, yes or no, I want this machine encrypted. So you can customize it on the fly per machine rather than creating a task sequence for each one, which might be a little bit simpler way of doing things and add an extra layer of functionality that you can or can't use, you might or might not want to use. Again, all these things are completely optional. You don't have to use them. So a lot of these deployments and configurations that you do are based on collections. If you think of a collection like a group, but it's a little bit more complicated than just a group that you might think of, like in the sense of Active Directory, whereby it's a group of objects. The groups or collections, as they're referred to in SCCM, are query-based, and these queries can be as complicated as you like. They're based on WQL language, which is kind of a hybrid between SQL and WMI. Now there's literally thousands of combinations that you can have for the query. So it could just be as simple as an operating system version, it could be a particular IP subnet, machine type, MAC address. You know, there's hundreds of things in here. It could be as simple as a particular OU with an Active Directory or a group with an Active Directory. But if you look through this list, you'll see it's quite comprehensive. Each of these items will have associated attributes with it. So as you can see from the list, anything you can think of will be in there. The machine will have a certain amount of memory. The machine's got a particular application installed. So you could have a collection of Office 2010 installed, a collection with Office 2013 installed, so that when you are deploying your updates for 2010 or 2013, you can target it towards a particular collection, which is something that's quite useful. And you can also see on the fly how many machines have got this installed, how many machines are Windows 7. Can be quite useful for an additional inventory perspective. These can be quite as complicated as you like. What you tend to do is say to people is determine how you want to do something and then work backwards. Quite often people have already done it in the past. Rather than you going through the wizard and the drop-down menus, what you can do is you can just paste the query into the query statement, and that might be a little bit of an easier way of doing things depending on how you work. And this can be based on device collections or user collections, similar to Active Directory, again, but a little bit more granular in how you set up things. Just going down this list, you can also do things from the console, such as change the user's password, disable accounts, unlock an account, rather than you flicking backwards and forwards from Active Directory or another server. If you use SCCM a lot, it allows you to do all these things from one place, which is quite useful. Under the device section, You can do things like force a group policy update onto a machine, connect to the local drive. Maybe you've got a server in your environment that you want to schedule a restart on, or just ping just to make sure it's online. And you can also configure your application deployment and Windows updates with Wake on LAN as well, which is integrated into SCCM. For example, you could have a group of machines that you want to update on the weekend. You can tell SCCM to start them all up using Wake on LAN, install the updates, and then shut them down afterwards. You can also link that in with operating system deployments as well. So if you were doing maybe a machine refresh of an image, what you can do is you can set it up so that the OS deployment wakes up all the machines using Wake on LAN. It will then force that image over the top and shut down the machine afterwards. It means you're not having to go around all your different machines telling them to re-image. It will do it all for you, which can save a little bit of time. Under the same console as I was saying before, forefront endpoint protection is included as part of the product. So you can manage your antivirus and anti-malware product and also firewalls all within the same console, which is really useful. Also deploy things like Wi-Fi profiles, VPN profiles, to save you having to configure them on each machine, which again can save you a little bit of time. You've got configuration baselines, which can be linked in with remediation. So you can say if a machine is not encrypted and it's part of this compliance baseline group, I want you to remediate that. You can link that in with network access protection, which might be useful for example, you have antivirus on all your machines. If a machine doesn't have antivirus on it for whatever reason, you can say block this machine from accessing anything apart from the system center server and the antivirus server until it's remediated. And the remediation process can be automated. An extra layer of security, again, completely optional. You don't need to use it if you don't want. So under the monitoring workspace, you can get quite a good feel for what's going on in your environment. This is all the reports. As you can see, the reporting capabilities are quite extensive, all built on SQL reporting services. So the chances are you're going to find something in here that's useful. You can report on applications that are installed, how many machines have 2 gig of RAM, anything you can think of. And if there's something that's not in here, because it's all built on SQL reporting services, you can go into Google, search for it, and then just add it into the reporting list, and then you can then schedule that report if you wanted to. I think I might have a... So this is an example report for Word. How often is it being used? Average duration per day. How many times is it being used? So you can use that for licensing purposes, or if you wanted, as I said at the beginning, if you wanted to get rid of an application because it was using up space and you're doing a little bit of a tidy up, you can do a report saying, give me all the applications in my environment that have not been used within the last 6 months, and then that allow you to do your tidy up safe in the knowledge that it's definitely not being used. You can also get information back as to the current status of your clients and also your deployments as well. So if a particular deployment's going right or not, you've also got a compliance rating, so how many machines actually have this on. You can get all that information from the console, and information about your antivirus, all fed back, and you can do reports on it. So under the administration workspace, this is where you'd configure the link into Active Directory. So SCCM will suck up all the information from Active Directory, and then you can then use that within SCCM. Also link it in with Exchange for managing your mobile devices, and under mobile device management, you can manage unmanaged devices, i.e. machines that are not part of your domain, and link that one with Windows Intune, which might be a consideration if you're looking to BYOD or bring your own device in the future. You can also configure security under here, so you've got security roles, basically what the user can do. So it could be as simple as this user is an application approver, so that's all they can do. You then link it to the particular Active Directory group, or you can be more granular, full administrator, whatever, however you wanted to set up your environment. You can configure it all in here. I think that's everything that I can think of, which is a very high level overview of all the features. Again, I can go over things in more detail on a one-to-one basis. I think that's...
Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, just a quick note at the end as well, just with regards to the licensing. So Microsoft have recently changed or slightly changed the licensing model for SCCM in education, and that says if you've got existing desktop edu SKU that is current, then you get the System Center license. The client license as well as the back-end license now is also free of charge as part of the agreement. So from a licensing standpoint, certainly very little cost. I think there's a nominal cost associated with server management and virtual machine management, but overall, yeah, fairly cheap to buy from a licensing point of view.